Bittersweet to introduce this next session because I'm super excited about it, but it is our final session. Music has been such a core part of this ZEG, particularly this year. We've had Gigash on the piano, JP on this stage, we've had Georgian polyphonic singing. So I think it's only fitting that we end ZEG 2025 with a very special musical act. And here to introduce our final act is a producer and manager who works across all sorts of entertainment and has worked with all sorts of fascinating individuals. He is a second-time Zegger, and I'm sure we'll be back next year. Jake Friedman.
We're almost at the end, and I am tired. But I feel so grateful to be here, and I've had so many interesting conversations with speakers and participants, and I had the opportunity to meet Kordz a few days ago, and I know how unique an artist he is and how special an artist he is, and I feel so grateful that we get to have him here for the last session of ZEG. Please. So Kordz is going to play a few pieces of music for us, and then we'll speak about them. But the first sound that you hear when he begins his performance is actually going to be before he was Kordz. Alexandre at age 4, recordings made by his aunt before leaving Georgia for almost 20 years. Please, let's give a hand to Kordz.
მე ვაპარაკობ ბატონ ბრუნტეტულანაზე. ბრუნტეტი არის ქვესკნელი. ხო და ძალიან საინტერესო არის. იქ ეშმაკები და ვიღაც ჯადოქრები, ბროტები არ არიან, იქ ყველა კეთილია. ხო და ამიტომ ძალიან შესანიშნავი ქვესკნელი არის. დაბადების დღეს კარნავალებსაც კი ხდიან. ხო და დაბადების დღეებს. ამიტომ ძალიან უშნაური ქვესკნელი არის. ხო და თქვენ რომ მიხვიდეთ ძალიან დაგაინტერესებთ. ხო და მე ძალიან მიყვარს ეს ქვესკნელი. ხანდახან მეც მივდივარ ხოლმე. იქ ჩემი მეგობრები ცხოვრობენ. 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 იქ ჩემი მეგობრები I am hard. 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 I am I am hard. I am hard. I am hard. I am I am hard. I am hard. I am hard. I am I am hard. I am hard. I am hard. I am I am hard. I am hard. I am
Hello, everybody.
Thank you. So I want to jump right in. The experience of seeing this and listening to this, there's three elements that I think I would love for you to talk about. You obviously have this archival source material that's you. You obviously have a composition, but so much of what you're doing is so performance-based and has elements of improvisation. So how do you bring these elements together in a piece like this?
Well, this piece started out, just for everyone, maybe a little introduction maybe, because no one knows probably, except the ones who've been to the theater performance 2 years ago. Nice. Who has been to the theater performance? Wow. Not bad, not bad.
I told you.
Cool. I was born and I grew up in Georgia, and in 1999, when I was 5, I moved to Switzerland, and I stayed there for 20 years. And exactly in 2019, 20 years later, I moved back. And when I moved back, I found these old cassette tapes that my aunt recorded with me in 1999, where she did like interviews with me about, you know, my life and my fantasy world, and you know, what am I going to do in Switzerland when I move out finally to this terrible country that we're in right now, and so yeah, so I found these tape recordings right when I decided to move back, and I thought that had this meaning, so I have to do something with it. And first I composed this piece of music for a Dutch ensemble called Cluster 5, and it was like more like a chamber music piece, like contemporary chamber music piece with these story elements, but very sparse. And I did that, and the rest thing is a very sort of a Georgian thing that happened afterwards because I moved back to Georgia, and at some point I thought, man, I really want to do this piece in Georgia. And I told this to my manager, who's now doing the visuals, and he was Goka, and and he was like, well, if we're going to do it in Georgia, we have to do it somehow, like bigger somehow. I don't know why, but that's
So what does bigger mean then?
just more like with a more like visual kind of stronger visual or more. I don't think he really knew what he meant, but so then his roommate is friends with like a good theater guy from down the street, from a theater director named Sandro Kalandadze from the theater Haraki, maybe you know, and we showed him the material, and he was like, man, this is amazing. We have to do like a proper piece out of it, like an hour-long theater piece with like the music, but also like this extended narrative of everything. So we did all kinds of things, and then we came up with this.
And the name of this world that you imagined when you were 4 is, how do you pronounce it?
Brunteti.
Brunteti. And what does that mean to you then and I guess now?
Well, that's a funny question. I mean, I grew up with like, for me, Brunteti meant like, my sort of the 5 years I spent in Georgia before I like had to emigrate or emigrated with my mother. And it was always connected like to Georgia. This is like my world and my friends. Actually the text of the first track was my friends live there. So that was like looping in the back all the time. And that was about, I'm talking about my like friends in Brunteti in the fantasy world. But then when we were sort of analyzing everything now for the piece, it felt like more like, the real friends who are like staying in Georgia, and then you move out of the country, and then your real friends can't, they can't come along. So it's like both worlds. That's why it's real worlds. What was the name of the panel?
Natalia?
Imaginary worlds with real impact, right? Ta-da.
So I just want to continue the chronology here. You're 4 years old, you have these recordings. You leave Georgia for 20 years, where you will study music in a few different countries, correct?
Yes. I did my bachelor's degree in Basel, Switzerland, and my master's in The Hague, Netherlands. Thank you.
And at that point, this began as a more traditional composition, or at least the music that underlined some of this.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Europe is that you have to do everything with commissions because it has to be funded somehow. So you have to have these ideas, and then you have to put them in a certain context where they might get paid. At least that's how I perceive being in Europe.
And so that context was a more traditional
Yeah, that
ensemble.
was more sort of what do you say, traditional, like a quintet, like an acoustic quintet with electronics. I really liked the piece because the material and like this whole thing working with myself from 20 years ago, like I had to cry all the time while working on it. That was so yeah.
And then something that we were chatting about 2 days ago, which I found so interesting, is the way that the artistic community and the artist community works here in Georgia, and how there doesn't seem to be genre barriers as much as it's one community and it speaks to each other. How does that way of working, how did that create this collaboration that allowed this piece to evolve to what it's become now?
Well, it's several, again, this is my perception of like someone who lives in Georgia from 2019 on, so I'm not talking for everybody. In my perception, this whole aspect of collaborating in between different genres, like whether it's, acoustic music, classical music, folk music, rap music, pop, theater, kind of everything. Collaborating between these worlds is really easy in a way, and it's much more easy than I think it is in other countries, because there a lot is based on like, a pre-existing industry, a pre-existing what do you say, like pre-existing, yeah, financing situations. I don't know. Yeah, and and uh, and here, yeah, I feel like you could just like find some people who we really want to work with and start a project, get some kind of and somehow make it happen really fast. You don't need to like plan ahead for 3 years until you don't know why you started and that kind of thing.
So, so let's go back to this piece then, because I want to track this collaboration, right? So you come back to Georgia, and you immediately add a different element to it, which is a theatrical element. And I guess my question for you is just help us understand how you continually revisited this story or this piece of music or this source recording. Like, so much of listening to your music is like being inside a world which is so foreign but so familiar, and it has that sort of like repetition the way that like a memory does. And I feel like I keep encountering things that I haven't heard before but I know. How did this come together for you? And how do you see this collaboration sort of turning into what it became?
Two things. Well, one was that the director, I mean the theater director, Sandro, he really motivated me to, continue working on this, because he really had this, this is, because myself, you don't want to like put too much like importance on your own past, kind of, because it feels a bit, like self-important, kind of. And so I didn't want to, it felt like a bit wrong, but Sandro always told me that this is not, just about you, it's like, this kind of story has more meaning than just you, so don't worry about this too much. So a lot of time working together was actually talking about, how much is this like me sort of jerking myself off and kind of.
Well, but talk about that, because there is something deeply familiar about it. What does it mean to find a shared past through composition, through multi-textual elements, through narrative and storytelling?
Well, actually, it's funny because for today, I have this thing where for every performance I have to like prepare something new, because else I get bored of the material really fast. And for today, I prepared like completely new versions for it, because I thought I have to do it alone somehow. And I always wanted to do something with it's a funny story, just because, concretely because of you, because I always wanted to do something with looper, with looper pedals, and I never did it. And I thought, man, that I should try it out. And then 2 days ago when we met, he told me that you're managing Marc Rebillet, who does like everything with loopers. And I thought, man, I'm fucked. Like he's gonna know I have no idea what I'm doing.
But I mean, well, it's funny you say that, because again, I think what's so interesting for me about the way that you're working is you have this strong composition element in all traditional classical training. You have this story which lives in different countries and lives in different traditions, right? And also you have this strong performative element, And
what do you mean with performative element?
I'm watching you up there and I'm watching you perform instruments live in a way that has improvisational qualities and has sort of this difference, and even the way that you talked about coming up with a different version today. I think there's something very alive about this work. And I'm just sort of curious, for you as an artist right now, what does it mean to have a work of art that is living, where every time you perform it, it's slightly different? There's a degree of impermanence. There's something that can't be quantified.
It's a good, funny point. I watched this, this Instagram reel, like a couple of days ago, and there it said, like, there's difference between jazz musicians and rock musicians, is that rock musicians prepare a performance, whereas jazz musicians prepare, like, the elements of a performance, and they just let it happen. And instead, I'm thinking about whether I'm a rock musician or a jazz musician. I don't know if this categorization is true, but it's kind of stuck in my head, because there is this one part of me that always wants to like prepare everything, like just rehearse it until it's perfect, and then the other part is that gets really boring. And so you want to have like a kind of something to always change. And I think it's quite challenging for me, because I always feel like when something is going really well, then you end up like trying to, change it again. This really doesn't go well in like what I perceive to be the current like state of being an artist, that you just change all the time, like. But again, I'm just saying that like from a superficial perspective, that internally I know that everything I do is exactly the same, and I don't think that a lot of my listeners know that behind the facade of different genres and collaborations and stuff, it's always like really me, I think.
But your work outside of this piece, you're often taking elements of other songs, reimagining, remixing, introducing different elements. You know, there's something sort of intertextual about your work. And I guess my question is, your identity as an artist in Georgia right now, you know, what are the tools that you need for artistic practice? Is it about improvisation? Is it about raw material? Is it about having to be dynamic?
There's several things. I keep thinking that you're asking me the same question. I'm not answering it somehow properly. I don't. Maybe
I mean,
I'm doing
I love your answers. I think I'm just going deeper
okay,
here.
cool.
Because
Okay. Well, I don't know. It's hard to like say this is my role in society of Georgian arts today, kind of statement. But what I enjoy is having like making like really bringing these really musical worlds together that are really far apart, or that you would perceive far apart. You know, with you know, I mean, we have this musical history in Georgia. There are like these two kinds of different musical histories. We have like the folk music, which is like the, you know, the serious, high-quality music that we should all be proud of, and we are. And then we have the Soviet-era music that is, you know, objectively less amazing, but it's still the music that we grew up with, and it's still a huge part of inspiration for every Georgian, I think at least. I mean, I can't talk for me, it's a huge inspiration. So you end up in this dilemma that you're inspired by music that in itself might be pretty shallow in a certain way. Again, it's hard to define what shallow music is, but for me that feels that way. So, so it's like, where did we start?
I mean, I think you answered it. I think I was just interested in all the things you bring into your music.
Yeah, so exactly. So this, I mean, what I discovered when I came back is that a lot of music that I did before I came back was really closely based on like film music and TV and, you know, stuff that I heard in the 90s in Georgia, but I really didn't know. So then my listeners and my family members would tell me that this is really like this other piece. And then I had to sort of unravel the music that I listened to as a child and to realize what's in my previous like work. And so by being here, I get to, you know, kind of work together. Like I just had like very recent this collaboration with Nani Bregvadze, who is like, you know, like the biggest like star in Georgia, and she's now 88. And you know, she's one of the people who I listened to as a child. And one of my favorite songs we got to do together, like a reinterpretation of how I wanted it to do as a, you know, as a teenager, for example. And that kind of thing is, I think, what's very unique for me about being in Georgia. And yeah, it's like, yeah, it feels like being like part of something. I feel like when I'm somewhere else, or when I was living in, you know, in Switzerland, Netherlands, you never felt like, as a musician, you were like part of, always felt like you're sort of like an external entity, kind of, you know, doing your thing. And it felt very like individual based. And here it feels like you're just, yeah, I don't know, just you're part of something bigger than just, you know, like getting funding for your piece, you know.
Would you be comfortable sharing one more piece with us tonight?
Yes, sure. I would love to.
We would love that. Thank you.
Thank you.